In this short revision video, we're going to be looking at the rational model. Now remember, this model looks at how we create a strategy as an organisation, and pretty much the entire syllabus hangs off this model. It's worth remembering as well that you can be directly asked to discuss this model, in particular its pros and cons. Now, as we mentioned, the rational model assumes that you are going to create a strategy using a series of clearly defined stages, and you can see these stages here on the screen. Different approaches, different theorists have come up with slightly different versions of this, so don't worry if you see slight variations on this in your revision, but this is the approach that we're going to be using in the exam. What we're going to go on to do now is have a look at what happens in theory in each of these different stages. The first stage is to set your organisation's mission. Now remember, a mission is just a high-level statement of what your company or your organisation wants to achieve. Whether that is to become very profitable, whether it is to deal with particular problems that it's facing, there has to be some overall purpose to your organisation. This will tend to be a very general statement of what the company wants to achieve. The problem with mission statements tends to be that they are very high level and very vague. So they may be something like become the best company in our market, beat all of our competitors. But what does the mission statement mean? Well, what we have to do is we have to convert that mission into a set of objectives. Now, if you remember, objectives are just targets or goals, specific targets and goals that you want to achieve. If you achieve these specific targets and goals, then you will be achieving your overall mission. So think of objectives as just being these specific targets. If you remember, there's a very important acronym that goes with this, which is SMART. Your objectives have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time constrained. So we have now set ourselves specific targets for what we want to achieve as an organisation. So how do we go about achieving these goals? Well, before we try and answer that question, it's very important that we undertake the next stage of the rational model, which is analysis. Now, analysis tries to understand the current position of our organisation, both internally and externally. So all of the different things that could impact on our strategy and our ability to be successful. The argument for doing this analysis first is that we're not going to be able to accomplish those objectives, those targets we set ourselves, if we don't understand our current position. Now, the analysis section breaks down into several other parts. First up, we would have a look at external analysis. External analysis just involves us getting a feel for what factors outside our organisation that might affect us and the strategies that we need to put in place, the things that we need to do to try and achieve our overall objectives. There are a number of different models you can use to help you with this, including 5 forces, SPENT, and Porter's diamond. We would then go on to have a look at internal analysis. Internal analysis is, well, exactly as it sounds. Involves us having a look at the internal workings, the abilities, the skills, the resources in our organisation to get a feel for what we're capable of. Because again, that will have a significant impact on our chosen strategies. And again, there are a number of different models and theories that you can use to help you undertake that analysis, including resource analysis, competence and critical success factor analysis, and value chain analysis. Finally, we're likely to have a look at stakeholder analysis. Now, in some ways, this does cross over a little bit with the last 2 sections of analysis that we've just done. Stakeholder analysis looks at the groups or individuals that potentially our strategy might affect, or that might be able to affect what strategy we decide to pick. There are a number of different models that we can use to help us with this, again including Mendelov's matrix and the various models surrounding corporate ethics and sustainability. Once we've undertaken full analysis, our problem is that we have a large amount of data. So we'll have found lots and lots of bits of information about things that might impact on our organisation and its chosen strategy. So within the next stage of the rational model, we have options. In other words, what we do here first of all is we try and pull our analysis down and filter it down into key issues, which is essentially SWOT analysis. Once we've identified the key issues, then we can look at possible strategies that the company might want to take or use. And there are a number of different models that you can use for this that suggest possible strategies that might work for your business, including Porter's generic strategies, Bowman's clock, and Ansough's matrix. So by the end of this stage, you'll have a very long list of possible strategies that might be suitable for your organisation. Now, it's great having a big list of strategies, but we can't do all of them. So the next stage in the rational model is to make a choice. So pick the strategy that you think suits your organisation the best. And there's only really one model that we need to use for this, which is the SAF model. But essentially what we're trying to do is just match which of the strategies that we could do suits the circumstances of our business the best, which is the most likely to help us achieve our overall objectives and mission. Once we've picked a strategy, then the next step is implementation. All we mean by implementation is, well, pretty much how it sounds. We're going to have to actually do that new strategy. So we'll have to find a way of putting it into operation practically. And there are lots of practical things that you're going to have to do to make a new strategy successful for any organisation. They include things like making sure you've got the right information technology, making sure that you manage your workers to ensure that they're comfortable with what you're suggesting and they understand the new strategy, marketing it to your customers, designing how you organise your company and how you structure it to best satisfy your needs, and different ways that you can potentially grow your organisation strategically as well. Implementation is really where we leave this model within this particular syllabus. So you won't really get asked any questions about the final stage, but it's worth mentioning anyway. Once you've actually implemented your strategy, there is always a chance that that strategy perhaps won't be particularly successful. So the final stage of the rational model is to review. Basically, keep monitoring your strategy and see whether you are actually achieving the objectives and your overall mission that you were hoping for in the first place. If you find that you are achieving your mission and your objectives, fantastic, keep doing what you're doing. If you find this particular strategy isn't working, then obviously what you want to do is stop and go back and perhaps pick another one and see if that helps get you closer to those objectives instead. The final thing to remember about the rational model is simply when it's good and when it's perhaps not so good. Okay, so remember that advantages of the rational model, it's easy and it's logical. It takes you through a series of useful, sensible steps to create a strategy for your organisation. And that often means that it is good, particularly for inexperienced managers. So maybe if you've never come up with a strategy for an organisation before, it holds you by the hand and helps ensure that you are able to come up with a sensible strategy. It's also quite attractive to investors because it gives them confidence that the company is actually coming up with a sensible strategy. They've gone step by step and they've created this kind of model strategy that they're planning on following. However, it isn't perfect. Remember, it's slow and time consuming, particularly doing the analysis stage can take a very long time. And particularly for fast changing industries, you'll find it takes so long to do the analysis that you may find that the analysis has become outdated and you'll therefore make the wrong decisions from this particular model. There's the possibility of bounded rationality. So remember, this occurs when simply you miss things within the analysis stage and therefore make the wrong choices. And there's also an argument that it reduces innovation. So your employees will simply see the plan that the rational model has created and stick to it, regardless of whether it's particularly successful or not.